Go ahead.
Good evening. The September 24th, 2018 meeting of the Prescott Valley Board of Adjustment is now called to order. For the information of the public, the Board of Adjustment is an impartial body made up of residents of the town of Prescott Valley who volunteer their time and efforts and are guided by state and local rules and regulations. When you address the board, please state your name and address for the record. Only one person may speak at a time, and all remarks must be addressed to the board as a whole. As chairperson, I will now note for the record all town employees who are present. Fernando Gonzalez, Code Enforcement Supervisor, is here. Carrie Stuti, Administrative Assistant, is here. May I ask you to call the roll?
Member Smith?
Here.
Member Corrigan?
Here.
Vice Chair Johnson? Chairperson Shimon?
Here. I will note now for the record, since the full board is not present, applicants in the audience, we do not have a full board present at tonight's meeting. Pursuant to Article 1329-060, you have the right to request that your item be deferred to a future meeting date when a 5-member board is present. A board approval or denial requires a majority vote. The motion will not pass if there are less than a majority affirmative votes. Please make the request known before we hear your application. Has any board member any modifications or changes to be made to the July 23rd, 2018 minutes? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the minutes as submitted?
So moved. Second.
A roll call vote, please. Voice vote.
Member Corrigan?
Yes.
Member Smith?
Yes.
Chairperson Shimon?
Yes. The minutes are accepted as submitted. Are there any announcements from staff or fellow board members?
I would like to introduce David Smith. He's our new member starting today. We appreciate him stepping up and being a member. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Mrs. Brown, the applicant.
Hi. In fairness, I would like to reread Article 1329-060 so that you may decide with an information whether or not you choose to proceed. We do not have a full board present at tonight's meeting. Pursuant to Article 1329-060, you have the right to request that your item be deferred to a future meeting date when a full 5-member board is present. A board approval or denial requires a majority vote. The motion will not pass if there is less than a majority affirmative votes. Please make this request known before we hear your application. Thank you. I will read for the record the application of Cindy Brown, owner, a request for a variance to temporarily waive the requirement described within Section 1323-090B1 of the Town of Prescott Valley zoning ordinance, which requires all non-conforming signs on the premises to be modified to bring it into conformance and to allow the sign to remain in place until the end of the current lease. The subject property is located on a vacant lot, Prescott Country Club, APN 402-14703B. Mr. Gonzalez, would you make the staff presentation, please?
Yes, thank you. The subject property was first developed in 1973 under Yavapai County guidance. The development on the property or the improvements were a office building, associated parking, and there was a billboard on site. Back in February of 2004, the town of Prescott Valley annexed that parcel, and it was 402-14002H at that time. And when we annexed it, we gave it a designation of C3 PAD. The PAD is a planned area development. The C3 zoning districts allows for heavy uses in conjunction with or proximity to a neighborhood. The office building and the associated parking is allowed by matter of right in a C3 zoning district. However, the billboard is first allowed by matter of right in a PM zoning district. So the billboard became an accessory use at the time of annexation to the office use and the associated parking. It also enjoyed the what we call a non-conforming use because it's not allowed in that zoning district, and there are stipulations in the PM with distance from the highway, which is 600 feet, which it didn't meet as well. So these are two performance standards that it didn't meet, and that's why it's a non-conforming use. In May of 2017, Prescott Valley Investment LLC, the owners of record at the time, went through the Yavapai County and took action to split these parcels at that time. And what they did is they separated a 1 acre parcel, keeping the office and parking area together in one parcel, and then subsequently sold that parcel, leaving the 0.85 acres by itself with some parking and the billboard. At the time when they did that, unfortunately, the billboard now became the primary use because there is no other use on the parcel. The parking had no association with the billboard whatsoever. So what the reason for that is they wanted to sell the one parcel instead of keeping it together. And PVI actually retained the parcel with the billboard and some of the parking that was associated with the office use. PVI contracted to sell is now contracted or was contracted to sell the additional parcel to Mrs. Brown, who is the applicant requesting this variance today. At that time, both the property owners actually, when they came in and she was doing her due diligence, came to the town and asked us, hey, what is it that we're going to need to obtain a building permit? At the time, research found that they had done the split and she was looking to buy the other parcel. Well, when we did this, we identified the issue. We both spoke with the property owner and Mrs. Brown and told them that unfortunately, because of the split, that billboard now lost its non-conforming use, and it is now not an accessory use to the office because now that's on a separate parcel, and now it's a primary use on the parcel that they kept. I hope I didn't lose you. So when they did that, it lost its non-conformant use, it lost its accessory use, and now it became the primary use. Town Code Section 1304.020 states that any change to a non-conforming use at any other use terminates the right to continue such a non-conforming use. And the facts indicate that PVI failed to comply with town review process. In order to split the parcel, there is a process that has to go through the town. Section 1322-410C, the split failed to the requirements set forth in whole and part under the code, causing the accessory designation of the billboard to become a primary use, and the purpose causing it to lose its non-conforming status at that time. Due to the facts, staff is recommending that you approve V18-002 to temporarily waive the requirement in Section 1323.090B1 under the following conditions. And the reason we're asking for this is because if not, we're going to have to move forward and require that billboard be removed. There is a lease associated with the purchase of the property. That lease moves with the purchase. And the lease does end in 2021. And the stipulation or the requirement that we have is that a demo permit be pulled or for the billboard shall be obtained no less than 10 days from December the 7th, 2021, and removing the billboard shall be completed within 30 days of that date. And that's the end of the lease. So what we're trying to do is not cause her any additional heartache because the lease is in place. They have it with the American Sign Company. And all we're trying to do is allow them to continue until the lease is over. And at that time, they will terminate the lease and remove the billboard from the property.
A mundane question.
Sure.
That sign apparently won't interfere with the building or the parking?
The
she
location of the
proposes?
sign itself will not interfere with any improvements on the property. That is correct.
Ms. Shimon, could I ask a couple questions?
The chair recognizes board member.
First of all, has there ever been a proper subdivision application with the town of Prescott Valley?
Proper subdivision? No, there is not a requirement for a subdivision application unless they're dividing up more than 4 parcels. And at the time of annexation, there was only 2. Well, there was 1 parcel and they divided it into 2 parcels. So there was never an application.
So then there's no requirement that there be a subdivision application before the town of Prescott Valley, and it was sufficient to take it to Yavapai?
No, not for a subdivision, but there was a requirement for the lot split. To split the 1 parcel into 2, there is a requirement through the town code, which they failed to do. And this is why where we're at today, because
All
they
right,
failed
that's
to.
what I was getting at.
Yes.
But assuming, for the sake of argument, and I think we can assume it, that there's never been an application to split the lot.
Correct.
Then the lot is not split. Is that correct?
But it's not split through the town of Prescott Valley. Yavapai County doesn't notify the town when they do splits, but they do because they have to go through the county. All we do is approve them through our process because there is a review portion of it. If they would have made the application to the town, we would have reviewed the application, we would have identified the billboard and gave them information in regards to what we're doing today.
But I read the chapter on land splits.
Yes.
And it seems to me that they have to come to the town of Prescott Valley to do a land split. And it also seems to me that we have criminal and civil penalties for them not doing that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And there's also a section of the ordinance which indicates, let's see if I can find it here. I'm sorry, please bear with me a second.
Sure, no problem.
Well, I can't find it now, but isn't there a provision in the ordinance that basically says that there can't be any review of an application if, in fact, they haven't gone through the process of the land split application?
That is correct. And the reason we're before the board today is to take care of the issue of the billboard in a time certain so that we can move forward to develop the property. Mrs. Brown, the applicant, is not the person who caused this issue. It was Prescott Valley Investment LLC. She is now currently the property owner and is trying to conform to the standards and bring the property up to compliance with the town code. But we need to clarify and make sure that we have something stating that at the end of the lease that billboard will be removed. And that's why we're giving her till the end of the lease.
Wouldn't the proper way to deal with this, based on the ordinance, be to either deny this application without prejudice or adjourn the application until the owner brings an application to do a lot split?
The lot split has already, well, it's
No, it hasn't been done.
not through the town of Prescott Valley, that's correct.
That's who we represent.
Right.
We're the town of Prescott Valley. So in our minds, this has never been split.
That is correct,
And if it's
yes.
never been split, there's no non-conforming billboard because it's all one property, so we can't even rule on that.
Well, no, not necessarily. You are correct that it's not split in the eyes of the town of Prescott Valley. However, the governing body over the splits is Yavapai County. They're the ones that issue parcel numbers, and they're the ones that have the process. All we do is review an application and sign the approval so it can go through Yavapai County. We don't actually do the splits. We have a process of review so that the county could go ahead and do the splits. And again, our process for review would have taken account the situation with the billboard, and we would have addressed it at that time with PV. Unfortunately, we weren't made aware of the situation until Mrs. Brown was buying or in her due diligence portion of the purchase of the property. And again, all she's trying to do is do the right thing and conform to the standards. And I'm sure she'll be willing to go if, through the process, make an application, now that she is the property owner.
I have no problem with the applicant. She is an innocent party here.
Correct.
What I have a problem with is the fact that it needs to be done from a proper procedural manner. I would suggest that there might be title problems involved if you don't have a proper split that's been okayed by the town. I would also suggest that it probably is incumbent on the board to follow our own ordinance, irrespective of what the county thinks, and require this application to be made for a lot split, and then it's decided by your office. You either approve it or don't approve it, and then at that point, we can rule on whether the billboard should be permitted to remain.
You can make that, you can make that stipulation if you wish to do so under, I can't require somebody to go back to the county, but by all means, you can rule on however you wish to do that. We can move forward and do that and cause her to come back, or we can have her do the lot split, go through the formal process, and we can return to the board if you wish to do so. You can rule that way, yes.
Well, I'm just one member, and
Oh,
I don't know what the rest of the board feels.
oh, sure, just a minute.
Normally, the applicant would address the board or speak after the board has actually conversed with staff. Okay. I'm reading from page 5, note, generally hardships and situations that run with the land, rocks, ditches, washes, etc., that would prevent enjoyment of the property if strict interpretation of the code were enforced, personal and/or self-inflicted conditions or hardships are not grounds for a variance.
That's correct,
This was a commercial transaction,
correct.
and you spoke of due diligence, and I would offer due diligence would have led to this situation, and perhaps accommodations for the billboard or the monies involved in satisfying the lease requirements would have been made before the purchase.
And I'm sure she can speak to that, but I believe she was bound by the contract as part of the purchase, but I don't want to speak out of turn.
Exactly. Have you a question, Mr. Smith, for Fernando? Mr. Gonzalez?
No.
And I would refer to the applicant.
Yes, the applicant, if you would like to address the board, please state your name and address for the record.
Cindy Brown, and do you want the business address or my home address?
I think probably your business address would suffice.
Okay, 12075 East State Route 69, Prescott Valley. So I own both of the parcels now, and there was some questions about having it split. I don't necessarily have to have it split, but so I don't care if it stays together. If it was split with the town of, or the Yavapai County, that split was what would require the billboard to come down, and I'm certainly okay with taking the billboard down. So if you want, and I don't split it, I'll leave it just like it is. I think the billboard could stay, but I probably would still take it down. because I don't necessarily want it there. So I'm not necessarily asking or demanding in any way to anybody that it splits. Does that make sense? Because I own both.
Okay.
But I would like to take the billboard down, but I just wanted to honor their lease, you know, because I feel strongly that it's the right thing to do, I guess. It may not be, but I feel like, you know, I didn't want to hurt the advertiser that had it leased for so many years.
Questions from the board?
Yeah, I guess from what we read, we didn't know that you own both parcels. That changes the water on the minnows, as far as I'm concerned anyway, that if you own both parcels, the split becomes moot, probably. That's my opinion, anyway. One board member.
I found the portion of the code that I wanted to read from before, and let me just put this into the record because I think it's important. It's Section 3B of, well, it's 1322 3B, civil penalties. Recording a land split in the office of the Yavapai County Recorder, which is not in accordance with this subdivision, is also a civil violation which shall be sanctioned as provided in Section 1331.030 of this chapter as amended. Furthermore, this is the part I was getting to. No building permit or other permit to use, construct, occupy, provide utilities to, grade, work in right-of-way, adjacent to, etc. may be issued for any lot, tract, or parcel resulting from any such unlawful land split. And I think, I interpret it, and I could be wrong, but I interpret it as saying that we really don't even have jurisdiction to hear the application. Now, everything has changed when the applicant indicates that she owns both parcels. And once that happens, she has a choice. She can go forward with the land split, in which case we'd have to rule on it. Or, and I don't mean go forward with the land split, go forward with the request for the variance, in which case we'd have to rule on the variance request. She can withdraw the variance request and keep the two parcels together, which she may or may not want to do. I would think once you have the parcels subdivided, you want to keep them subdivided in case you decide you want to sell one at some point. But since they're not subdivided pursuant to the town, you would have to come to the town and make a request for, and I don't mean a subdivision, I mean a, what do you call it? A
Property split.
property split. But that's your decision to make. All I'm saying is if we're going to rule on this in any shape or fashion, it needs to go for a property split before the department, and the department needs to grant it and or not grant it, and then they come back here and we could finish this application.
Or I can just not split it and leave it like it is. I mean, just keep it as one parcel with the town, and then take the billboard down at the end of the lease if I so desire, because I'd like to.
That's, I defer back to the chairperson. I don't want it.
I think that takes us out of out of the realm of talking with you, and it would then come back to the board for discussion, and if we have further questions, we would return to staff for an interpretation of our discussion before we actually make a motion. Is there anything else you would address to us?
I would just like to say that I'm fine either way, whatever works. We're doing a great development over there, and we'd like to see it through. We're putting a pharmacy in that area, and I think it's really needed. So I will do whatever I can. As far as the town is concerned, I can leave it one parcel if that makes it easier, and there's not a lot of stuff to do, or I can split it if you prefer to split it. I'd be happy to take the billboard down, even if it remains one parcel. I'd be happy to agree to take the billboard down. So whatever you know, whatever works, I will comply. I just would like to see if we can move forward with the development of the building.
It is not our province, and I refer to Mr. Gonzalez. We don't change code enforcement. We don't interpret code enforcement.
Okay?
We are here to discuss and make a decision on the matter of the variance, and I believe that to be correct.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm going to ask for comment from the public. Hearing none, I would return this item to the board for closing discussion. Comments?
I see the dilemma that she faces. I guess my question is, right now anyway, is there a need to proceed to get something done? The building, whatever type of thing is supposed to be built, or would a delay hinder that and create problems down the road for the applicant? My personal opinion is that I'd like to see that variance granted, simply because it needs to be done for her to get busy doing anything. But that's my vote, my point.
I just have one more question for Mr. Gonzalez. Based on that section that I read, that Section 3B of the chapter, isn't it a fact that we don't have jurisdiction to hear this application based on this ordinance?
No, actually, you do have. That section of ordinance pertains to subdivisions, not just lot splits or land splits, as we call them.
And why is it in the land split section of the code?
Because that's all encompassing under planning. Of course, we do the zoning portion, the planning department does theirs, and they all have that in their section of code. And this is the way it was explained to me. So they said when it's a subdivision split, 4 or more splits, then of course it becomes a water issue. You have to assure water rights and things of that nature. But when it's a land split, what they call a reversionary plat of a land split, that's just 2 parcels being split for whatever reason, whether it's somebody wants to sell a portion of it or they want to join 2 parcels. That's the way that they explained it to me.
You see that the first
Yes.
phrase in it refers specifically to land splits.
I do
It says land
understand.
split, Mr. Gonzalez. What would it mean other than a land split?
I do understand what you're saying, but if you read further into beside it being the land split, under the definition of the code, there is a difference. And unfortunately, I didn't bring a copy of that with me.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm done.
I ask both of you to discuss or consider with me what is reasonable due diligence. This is commercial property. This is not someone wanting to put a house at the edge of a ravine and not understanding they were violating setbacks. This was a commercial venture, and I don't necessarily, I keep going back to note directly above Mrs. Brown's signature, self-imposed conditions or hardships are not grounds for a variance. And I'm not asking you to condone or dispute that, but I would discuss it with my fellow board members.
I am completely in agreement with you. When you are ready to accept a motion, I'll make a motion on this.
Mr. Smith?
Entertain a motion.
I'm sorry.
Yes, the chair, the closing discussion is over. The chair does ask for a motion.
Okay. I make a motion to deny this application without prejudice to coming back at a later time once the applicant figures out exactly what she wants to do with this property and how she wants to handle it. And it's a motion to deny the application. It's based on a number of things. First of all, it's based on the fact that there was no application for a land split, and our ordinance requires an application to be made to the Town of Prescott Valley Department of Community Development before such a land split is granted. And ergo, if you don't have a land split, which you don't have, there's no need for the variance and there's no point in granting it because the billboard is not a primary use, it's an auxiliary use up until the time there's a land split. So my motion is to deny the application on those grounds.
I would second that motion. May I ask for a roll call vote, please?
Member Smith?
Yes.
Member Corrigan?
Yes?
Chairperson Schimmen?
Would you reread the motion?
So for the motion itself,
Yes.
so what Mr. Corrigan is saying is the motion would be denied.
Thank you. My vote is yes. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the board at this time? Hearing no further business, I'll accept a motion to adjourn, followed by a voice call vote.
So moved.
Second?
Member Smith?
Yes.
Member Corrigan?
Yes?
Chairperson Schimmen?
Yes. There being no further business and the motion to adjourn, we are adjourned.